Hello, dear friends. This is John Butler, and you're about to listen to a podcast called Running the River. This is a new podcast that I have put together with my dear friend Dingo Spender. He may recall helped me with the last podcast I made for my album Home. Here again, we deconstruct and get under the skin and get our hands dirty in the substrate soil of what I was envisioning for this latest ambient album. This is an album I made for wellness practitioners and practitioners alike to defrag and decompress in this very busy, fast, and quick world. And we hope you enjoy as we take you up, down, and across the river. This is Running the River. Let me ask you a question now that we've gotten through all the things we wanted to talk about. Is this like, what are you using to, if we're talking about, if the theme is you regulating the nervous system and dealing with all the pressures of modern society, let alone what we inherit epigenetically, what are your practices to create a more conducive life to ease? And I don't know, or maybe, not that life has to be all ease, but just maybe a more peaceful.
Yeah, peaceful. That's a good word. So yeah, my now, my tools in my tool belt are breath would be my hammer. That's my go-to daily work. Yeah. And went really deep into Ashtanga yoga, so like a fairly solid Ashtanga yoga practice, and the combination of those two with always meditating, every morning, they're my primary ways of getting through and being a kind, open-minded, patient, compassionate human being. To myself and my community and my family.
Solid regime.
And I'm gonna be the first to say it's like I'm not nailing it every morning. I hope that, in the telling of this, there is no part of it where it's like, I do this every single morning without fail. Like, the discipline side of it is a work in progress still.
Yeah. I mean, it all is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the real thing, like one thing the reoccurring thing I've heard from, the few different meditation modalities, it's like you will lose your center or you will lose the mantra. Just come back to it. And how you come back to it is actually more important than actually not falling off, because we will all fall. It's a wobble, I think. Yeah. The whole thing wobbles. Yeah. The whole thing. Yeah. Like energy wobbles really up and down, up and down. The earth is wobbling on its axis. It's like we're all wobbling. I think most people who practice kind of know this, but I think it's there's that kind of romantic aspect to kind of the whole quote unquote wellness world or whatever else that people see from the outside. It's like, it's like when you're looking for this some kind of utopic, unrealistic, fantastical idea of serenity, or and actually a lot of times there's a lot of discomfort. Yeah. And the tension and the release of it all. It's like, it's not just all about release. There has to be sun and moon, day and night, and that, I think another definition of yoga is just like the practice, it is the journey. It's like, it's not this, it's more of a way than a discipline, so to speak, that life is. Yeah. It's not like, cool, once you do this and then you do this, then it's all right. It's like, and then this too shall pass and something else is going to happen. And and for me, it's like finding the right combination as well. Like, I need running in my life or skateboarding in my life to give me that burst, and that kind of, and also just literally just the cardio. Yeah. And then I need other things that stop all the noise and have to sit still and meditate, or and then the breathing, which the modality that I was introduced to a year or so ago was just this idea, like, you're not trying to still the mind, you're actually just trying to keep the breath natural. You can move as much as you want. You can think about whatever you want to think about. And, just lack of expectation to get it right was actually really, really great little practice to have.
Yeah. And that's coming back to that practice, which is at the foundation of all these particular Eastern practices, is approaching it with kindness. Why would I beat myself up over not relaxing enough? Why would I get stressed that I'm not relaxed enough? It's like, okay.
It's such an industrialized way of approaching anything. I think we've so inherited model, and I don't know if you want to call it industrialization, capitalism, the patriarchy. I don't know what whatever.
It's all of that.
It can be a mixture of all of it. Inherited trauma, blah blah blah. But this idea that we see that in the West a bit with, say, yoga, for example. It's like, there is a small tendency, or depending on how large, I'm not part of the culture that much, but that it becomes a competition. Like, how much can you stretch? How long can you hold it? How bad? It's like, we industrialize everything. Everything has to be a commodity and a competition in the West. And to take that competition out and be kind, I always, recall, I probably said this in the last podcast, I said it a lot. It's like asking a friend about how he deals with anxiety. And I'm like, what do you do? I need some help. And she's like, firstly, I just try to be kind to myself. And it's just like, what did you say?
Yeah.
He said, I said, kind of like, well, what's that word mean? It was almost like he spoke another language to me.
Yeah.
It was so
foreign.
Out of the protocol that I would kind of, I've been raised with. I'm not saying that my parents weren't kind. I'm saying just this idea of, first of all, be kind. Oh, that's all right. That's okay. Rather than, fuck, I can't do this. Why can't I do it? Everybody else can do it.
Yeah. And when you start going the distilled wisdom of the masters, the spiritual masters like Thich Nhat Hanh, his approach, he embodies 100% the lifelong pursuit of kindness. Like it's an actual religion that he built Buddhism around to just keep supporting the intention of kindness to himself and community and the world.
Right. What year is this?
Thich Nhat Hanh is like, he died, I think, 3 years ago. Very famous Vietnamese Buddhist master. I'll pass it on. His interpretation of the Buddha is just heaven. Heaven. Yeah.
Interesting.
And what he did with his life and the example that his life became of kindness, it is a testament to.
It is probably the most
that peaceful action. It is beyond what he's my hero.
It's funny, like I was saying, when we're talking about the propensity, the ease in which meanness comes compared to kindness online. It's like, to be kind is probably the most radical.
It is.
And badass and punk thing that you could do. And actually, one of the hardest things to do. It's actually so easy to judge. It's something, I heard this, I don't know who he was. I recognize him from a movie of some sort. He was doing a valedictorian speech, for the graduation class, and I don't know if those are the same. If that valedictorian is probably somebody who's part of the graduation class. Anyways, he was doing a graduation speech as a guest speaker, and he was like, you can always tell who the smartest and not so smartest people in the room are. The meanest people are always the less intelligent, and the nicest people are the most. And he said, whether this is true or not, this isn't, obviously it's a metaphor for those listening, but it's like we are wired with fight or flight and negative bias to see others that are different to us, who are not birds of a feather to us, as a mystery, different, and potential danger. Whether that is sex, gender, orientation, ethnicity, color, we are wired biologically to a certain degree to go, oh, that's different. Is this a threat or, or an advantage? Whether we kind of like it or not, let alone all the social norms that then get built upon those things. He goes, and to be kind is to have enough, using enough of the last of our nervous system, the prefrontal cortex, the youngest part of our nervous system, and to analyzing and to go, oh, but that person, just because they're different color than me, doesn't mean they're a threat. Or that because that person, likes that sexual orientation, or because of that political persuasion or faith persuasion, that doesn't mean they're different to me, and they see the world maybe differently to how I see, or have a different perspective or a different preference. But they are not a threat to me, and they are no different to me in a lot of different ways. To have that cognitive practice. Yeah. To be mindful enough and not a reptile enough shows intelligence. Yeah. And so the meanest are actually the less intelligent, the most driven by primordial fears. And there was this always, I guess what I'm not making a statement as much as just like when you said kindness, really struck that it utilizes our most advanced inner biological technology. It takes a lot to love, to be kind. It does. When the world's driven by fear, a lot of it, and we're fed fear, and to bypass that enough, to have enough regulation. I mean, that's the main reason why I do it. I'm just regulating is key. My biggest regrets 9 times out of 10 are the fact that I wasn't regulated enough, usually around the people I love the most. Or the people I was so wanted to be understood by. How do I regulate the fear in me? It's interesting. Dan was saying the other day, I was like, I'm like, my intuition's pretty spot on. My gut is pretty spot on. And somehow, I think she said it, or we both got to, it's like, it's actually not the intuition or the gut. It's the filter that has to go through to get to a thought form and an action. Yeah. And the filter that my thoughts go through are survival and negative bias. Yeah. So I'll get a fucking smell on something, like something's not right. And then the filters it has to go through, which are going to be mixed with my trauma and my predispositions and everything else that I've inherited, either psychologically, physically, epigenetically, culturally. It's going to have to go through all that, all those biases, to then pop out the other side as, and this is what I think about that, or this is how I'm going to respond to it. Yeah. And I just find that really interesting. Yeah. That, you can have a great intuition, but if it's been translated through an app that has that's right, trauma bias of some sort, it's going to come back as defensive. Yeah. It's the same when they talk about AI or the internet. It's like, it's first of all, it's not artificial, nor is it intelligent to a certain degree. First of all, it's not art. It's completely coded by us and all our bias, our cultural and our racial bias and our political bias, and you can see that online as we speak. And nor is it very intelligent sometimes. Like it's how we choose to filter and what the input and the data points that are coming in are just data points, and it's like almost that kind of that Zen thing. It's just stuff happening. It's just life happening. There's no meaning to any of it, and then we're us meaning making machines. We process it in this hardware, and what pops out the other side can be anything from "Make America Great Again" to I choose not to eat any living animals to I do not understand that race or that religion, and how we program, how we choose to regulate. That is, I find interesting. By no means to anybody listening to I think I have any of the answers. I'm just profoundly struck by the filters in which we choose to take this data in. Yes. And then the narratives that we build them into that create our realities. Absolutely.
what I'm imagining, or the way I interpret that is through it's actually going back to another Buddhist. I mean, I'm really into Buddhism, but it's the way I'm regulating as well through that technology of Buddhism, and it's the concept that how I label it is how it appears.
Yeah.
So I'm creating, and the more conscious I am of my labeling style, habit, passion, just not passion,
predisposition. Yeah.
Thank you.
Predispositions on it. Yeah.
Yeah. The more I am afraid of being at the mercy of that, or like a victim of that.
Yeah.
Filtering.
Yeah.
The more I'm conscious of how I'm filtering, and it only requires a consciousness. It doesn't require anything. It doesn't require me to like even labor or effort what I want my new filter to be at that point. Just even the recognition of what is already there is incredibly liberating,
Yeah, when you actually realize I wrote that. Oh,
Yeah.
I just made that up.
Yeah.
I think that's where, to relate it back to anything we're talking about, and I keep on wanting to say, here's a bit of predisposition. I'm always trying to protect myself, and so I want to keep on saying to everybody, we don't know what we're talking about. We're just jamming here, and we're just taking in a bunch of evidence that we've collated, and some things work for us and may not work for you. But framing, how we choose to frame. Yeah, it's just like it is the end all and be all. And again, that's what I found myself again is that. And that's, I think, why we do the practice. Yeah. So that maybe in a fucking mere little glimpse, we're like, oh, I just made that up. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I just made that. Like I had enough distance from the canvas. Yeah. To observe myself, to be the observer for 5 seconds. I think that's what the practice allows. And it, usually for me, probably because of how much I practice, is I get glimpses. Mm-hmm. And I'll sit there and watch this person, who's myself, and what they're saying. Yeah, hanging up the clothes and be like, no, it's like, and that's whoa, like, hey, wow, what are you saying? You go, just know, and I've actually said it out loud. Hey, to myself, hey, you made that up. Yeah, so I want you to know, because what will happen is stories are so important to me and to I think us as human beings. We're built off stories. Is they can instantly, for me, I'm really noticing, cause a chemical reaction in my body. If I get a good enough story, I get scared, or I get moved in some way. I have a propensity to protect myself, be scared. It's fight or flight. So I instantly start making more cortisol. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm finding a chemical reaction in my body that literally I'll come down from. I have to take a fucking walk and wait until I'm sober from this chemical fucking infiltration that's just from a thought. Yeah, from your own thought. Yeah. Not even from a thought planned by an external party. Just not even a real thing. Self-generated. We're wacky. We're great. It's amazing, but I think that's what the practice has allowed, in some way or another, I guess. It's just those brief moments of like, oh, that's narrative. Mm-hmm. That's not real. Mm-hmm. And I think once you start looking at life a little bit that way, that's when things can almost feel a little bit unsettling at times, because you're like, oh, this is a collection of narratives. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah. I think it's kind of what happened to Jim Carrey a little bit. Like he kind of had this great point of view, perspective on himself and everything else. And it's like, what's Canadian mean? Yeah. What's Jim mean? I mean, really, it's a frame. It's an idea. It's an agreement. Yeah. Is that who I am? Like, you can really start going. Yeah, he's great. Right out there a little bit as far as all of those things are. Yeah. I like that it allows just a little bit of space in between me and that narrative to see maybe there's an author, and do I choose to actually want to go on that story ride or not? A little bit more choice. A little bit more choice. A little bit more choice. I'll be whole again. Wash me in your water, wash me in the sand.